Welcome back, guys. My name is Austin from awfulmedia.com, and this is part 6 of the Making a Simple Game in Unity tutorial series. In this part, we're going to be looking at creating a simple main menu. And the reason we're making a main menu now, even though I said we'll be doing the scoring system, is because I want to squeeze both of those in the same video, but I want to do it as quickly as possible. So what we're going to do is focus on the main menu, get some of that stuff out of the way. That way we'll be talking a bit more about GUI stuff. And then when we get to the scoring system, when we do the GUI stuff for the scoring system, it won't be as difficult for us to go through because you will already understand quite a bit of that stuff, and that's really good. So the idea, though, with our scoring system for now is whenever you run out of time, each level will have its own time limit. And each time, when you do run out of time, for now, like I said, for now, it will just send you back to the main menu and say, here, go again, click play, start the game over, and see how you do. Now in the future, we may have like save points where you get to this level and you're safe. If you lose, you don't go back to the very beginning, and that'd be fine. Or we might just do it based on level. It may never send you back. You may just keep going and just see how long it takes you to get through. And that's fine. But for now, I wanted to get a main menu out of the way, and this seemed like a good excuse to do so. We'll be focusing on the built-in GUI stuff for Unity. Now, there are better solutions on the asset store. If you are interested in expanding your GUI or just having a more advanced system, there are quite a few nice GUI systems on the asset store that you can download and start using right now. But Unity, the team at Unity, they are working on a GUI system. It's going to be a huge upgrade to this GUI system. And if you ever use a GUI system like NGUI or DFGUI, which are both kind of similar, I do prefer DFGUI. GUI to me, or DFGUI to me, I like I just like working in it a bit more. So I can suggest DFGUI, but I will not suggest that now, because you need to learn on GUI stuff before you start learning that stuff. That stuff's a bit more game object stuff. You know, it actually makes stuff in the world. When on GUI just draws these things on your screen, and that's fine. We're going to be using that. So the idea is for our main menu is to have a play button, and for now, just an exit button. Now in the future, we may have an options button or some other buttons that do different things, and a logo or something like that. But for now, just two buttons, maybe with some text for the name of the game. But for now, that'll be fine. So to do that, I'm going to start by creating a new scene. The menu itself will be within a new scene. So I'm going to go File and go to New Scene, and it instantly just takes me to a brand new scene. I'm going to hit Control S to save this into our levels as Main Menu. Click Save. Make sure that's loaded up. And then what I'm going to do is quickly go to my file and go to Build Settings, and I want to add Current. Now make sure you keep doing that, because that way you just won't have any issues in the future whenever you're trying to test games or anything like that. Just make sure it's always added to your build settings. I mean, you'll know it's not whenever it tells you it's not. That's just a good thing to do at first. And now inside of this, we're going to be creating a class, right? Now this class, we're not creating the class inside of the scene. It'll be just in our project folder, but it's going to only be used in this scene on this particular camera. So I'm going to go to Scripts, go to Create, and go to C# Script. Now, the class won't have to be on a camera. It can be on any object. You don't have to be on a camera to draw GUI elements, but it's the only object in the scene, and it can take the component. It can take any component, as it itself is just a game object with different components attached to it that make it a camera. So we can attach this to any game object, right? But we're choosing main camera because it's already in the scene and no reason to have any extra stuff in the scene. I'm gonna call this main menu, I guess. I can't really think of anything creative at the moment, so main menu will do for now. So that's saving. And then here we have main menu. Okay, we're not going to be using these default methods there that it provides for us. We're going to be using a method that we've not used yet, and that is on GUI. That's ONGUI. So we're going to do a void on GUI. Now this method, or this message is called whenever it's supposed to be drawing the GUI elements, whenever it does a redraw of the GUI elements. And we're not going to get into the processing on that level, but just keep in mind that this will be updating whenever it needs to be updated, right? So I'm going to go ahead and set up a simple element that we can look at. And this element is going to be a GUI button. Now watch what I do here though. We're going to be accessing this from the GUI class. I'm going to say GUI, and then what it is inside of this is a GUI.button, right? And notice it says though a button is a bool, and a bool is a boolean, right? And that stands for yes or no, true or false. Very, very simple math, right? It can be a 1 or it can be a 0. And depending on what it is, you do something. So you know when we check for something if it's a true or false, this is what a GUI button returns, a true or a false. So what if I just wanted to create a GUI button right here, just like that, and do that? Well, you can't. It won't do anything for us. And notice when I do this though, it's looking for some parameters. The parameters it wants is a position rectangle. So the position rectangle will contain the position of it and the width and the height, right? So we'll be defining all 4 points, but 2 of them are defined by the offset and 2 of them are defined by the total width and the total height. But in reality, that will just give us our X, our Y on a single line, or X or Y on down based on the height. So we could do that with rect. Now rect being what it is, it's a struct, right? So a rect is a struct. A struct, think of a class, but a bit more simple, and it's smaller, and it's a data type. It just contains information though. It's not really for doing all the stuff we do in classes, all these different functions and methods. Now it can contain a function, but it's not meant to. It's supposed to be really small and just contain data, just contain information that relates to one thing. So a rect being a struct, it will contain the X, the Y, the height, and the width. And that all relates to these points in space. And that's all the information it should contain, right? Now it can contain a constructor, which we've not got into, but we don't really have to because most of the stuff for us it creates constructors for us to set all of our values to default values and stuff like that. But for now, all we need to know is that is a struct, and we're creating a new instance of it. As we do with a class, we create a new instance of that object. So in this case, we're creating a new rect, and the information we're passing to it, if I do this right here, you'll see it's looking for a left, a top, a width, and a height. And I'm hitting up and down arrow keys to cycle through the different versions of that struct, trying to figure out which version, which parameters I want to pass through. Now you don't have to be on the correct one in order to pass those parameters. It just shows you the ones that are available. So I'm going to say struct, and the position of this one for now is going to be like 10, which would be 10 off of the left with 10 pixels, 10 off the top, and then the width would be, for now we'll do something like 400, and the height would be 100. And close that off. And now it's looking for text, which would be a string. And so say our button was the play button, the text value would be play. And this would just be on the button, the text you see. But what does this do for us? Let's go to our console here. Notice no error there. If I click play, I don't get anything because I didn't attach the actual class to anything. So I'm going to attach this to the main camera. Oh, I didn't name, the class file I saved it to, it did not name it to the name, or the class I didn't name to the name of the script file. Whenever I saved it as new behavior script, it updated it because I clicked off of it. So now though, if I click play, after I attach this once again, click play, we'll see this button right up here. And I can click it, and that's fine. It's getting information when my mouse is over it. You can see that I have a hover graphic. But when I click it, it does something, right? But it doesn't actually do anything, and the graphic just changes to a different graphic. But this returns true or false. So when it returns true is when it's being clicked, and it's false whenever it's not being clicked. So we can use that information to apply it to an if statement, and it would be true or false, right? So whenever it's clicked, anything in my if statement would become true. It would be happening. So I can say if, and I could pass it this GUI button. The full thing would be nice. Pass it the GUI button. And when I do click that, I want to make a print statement that says, I'm playing. Now go to Unity, and I'm going to, plays already clicked there. Oh, I made an error. Oh, yeah, do not add a semicolon there. And it should go away. Now when I click play, it says I'm playing. I'm playing. And now we can use that to do what we want to with it. Now let's add our next button. This button won't do anything yet except print that, but for now, we just want to add the other button we want. So I'm going to do an if, and then we're going to position this. Let's see, that button is 100 pixels up and down, right? So this will be 10 pixels off of the top one, so 100 pixels. That one's 10 pixels off. If my math is correct, that would be 120. Is my math not correct though? And that would be the wrong one actually. If I was to hit Control S, come in here and click play, we see, yeah, that's what I want. And we can make that button be equal to, or the text be equal to quit. Now the buttons are a bit too big. 400 is just way too big. We'll do 145. 145. Control S, come back in here, and there we go, play and quit. Now the size is a bit crazy now, so we'll just make this, what was that, 45? So we'll do 65. Control S, come back in here, and that should push it up there, and that's perfect. Now when we click on the quit button, we want to quit the application, and we can access that method through application, the application class, and go to quit. And we'll just do that right there. And whenever we click that button, the application should quit. But in the editor here, it's not really going to do that for us as it is not its own application. But when it is, clicking quit should close the game and get rid of all the stuff it needs to for us. We don't have to do any cleanup. It should do everything for us. But when we click play, we want to actually do application.load level. We've done load level before, but now we're going to do it in load level 0, as that is the index for the first level in the game. So now when I hit Control S, I'm going to come in here, and this is still playing, and that's great. Now when I click play, it takes me to level 1. How cool is that? So our main menu pretty much works already. So every time we lose in this game, say we run out of time or die, maybe not die. No. How are we going to do this? When we die, should time be reset? No, I don't think so. I think we'll make it difficult. So whenever you have a generous amount of time, right? And you can get through it and not die a single time, and you would do well because you would have a lot of time left, and that'd be great. But say you die and you respawn at the beginning of the level, you don't get more time, you just have extra time at the beginning to account for the deaths you'd have. So the goal is to not die as much. So when you run out of time on a level, it's game over, right? For now. We'll change it in the future where you have some save times or some save levels, whatever we want it to be. So this menu for now is how we want it to be. And that's very simple. Now on our main menu, if we were to go back to this and notice these buttons, they're pretty ugly, right? They're pretty ugly. They're nice for prototyping. They're great for that. And you can change this. Don't worry about that. You can put your own graphics in here. You can use your own images, use your own buttons, text, anything like that. Any font you want to bring in, you can do that. We're not going to talk about that today because we're doing it on a very, very basic level, but you can do that. We will be creating our own GUI style or GUI skin, and then making a couple custom styles in that for our countdown timer. But for this menu is done now. Well, no, let's add some text in. We'll add a little. We'll bump this down. We'll bump this down to. Let's see. Let's put this at. We'll do 10 plus 150. So this would be plus 140. And then on top of this, we can add some GUI.label. Now label will just be a little string of text. And this requires a rectangle for position as well, so we can do a new rect. And inside of this, we'll say the position will be 10, 10. Don't know about the width. We'll do 400, and the height will be 45. And the text will be what was the name of this game? Go Home, I believe it was, for some stupid reason. Now if I click play, you'll see that we have go home up there. But notice that text doesn't look too good. Well, how to change the size of that label? One thing we can do is if I go to, let's go to materials. We'll create the new GUI skin in materials. And I want to right click and click create. And we're going to create a new GUI skin. Now at the moment, Unity is using the default GUI skin. Notice when I create this, we already see all the stuff over in the inspector. There's a lot of stuff, right? And we're not going to be looking at much of any of this really, but we will be creating our own and then adding a couple custom styles ourselves. So I'm just going to call this GUI. And then over here, we see label, right? Button, all this stuff. We've used button and label. So we'll go to label, and then we get all of these different settings. If you go to normal, you'll see the normal is the text whenever it's not being hovered or focused or anything like that or used, right? So if I could change this to be red, stop this, and click play, it's not going to change to red because I didn't apply this setting or this skin to this element. It is just its own skin, but we can apply it to work in that class, and then all the GUI elements inside of that class will take the styles from this. And the way we do that is if I go to our our menu manager here, and we start up a public variable for GUI skin, and I'll call this skin. Now we can actually apply that. GUI skin is the type, okay? So we can actually apply the skin to our main camera, to our main menu script, just drag this over there. And now to apply that to that, I will go to my onGUI, I will go to GUI, as in the class that we're accessing it through, .skin, and then we can set this skin to equal skin. Now remember, skin is our variable, and skin is the property inside of the GUI class. We're just setting the property inside of the GUI class to equal to our field GUI skin, or our GUI skin itself that we assigned it to in the inspector. So now in this onGUI, the GUI skin it will use is the GUI skin that we created. So now if everything's fine, when I click play, that text should be red, and it's not. I applied it during start, that's correct. So, or during simulation, so I'm going to go ahead and drop that in now when the game isn't running. Any changes you make, or most changes you make inside of a game while the game is running, only happen during runtime, because all you're doing is modifying the values to a variable or something like that, the same way you would if you're playing the game, right? If you do something in the game, it sets a variable to equal that. Well, that doesn't save itself hard-coded into the game. That just happens in runtime. When it stops, everything goes back to its values you set in the code. And that's all the inspector does. So when I drag that over to that during runtime, that was true during runtime, but now that the game's not simulating, it goes back to the default settings, or the settings that I had set to it in code itself. So while the game wasn't running, I set it to equal the GUI skin here. Now that knows that's the default that it goes back to when the game's not running. So when I click play, we should have red text. Now we have red go home. And I can take my GUI skin and let's go down into the font size. Font size says 0 as it is the starting point. And we'll make this something quite large, like 45. Click play. Now we should have red go home. Now notice the chop off at the bottom there. That is because the height of our label is not quite enough. So I want to do 75. Hit Control S. Bring that up and it'll get rid of that. And that's great. Now this is pretty freaking ugly, right? And that's fine right now. It's going to be ugly. But what I do want to do is actually bring these buttons back up a bit. So we'll do 100 and then 155, and that should bring it up about to where it should be. Yeah, that's fine. And this color is pretty ugly as well. I mean, it's all going to be super ugly. Now I can change the GUI label or the GUI settings here for our GUI skin outside of runtime. That's not something that is changed during runtime. So if I was to change this now, stop, notice the color still applies. So when I go back into it, it's the same, and that's great. So we can change this to something a bit different. I don't know, something like that. And our background to our camera is quite ugly. So we'll do, wow, I don't want to make anything that ugly really, but looks like we're going to, let's do a green of some kind. That is embarrassingly ugly. So let's change this to a, let's grab this green color. No, there's no saving this. With current graphics that we have on this screen, there is no saving that. The buttons aren't going to work. Nothing's going to work here, but that's fine. We have go home, and then we have play, which plays the game, and then quit, which would quit the game, had this been a build, and I changed that crap during my time. Doesn't matter. I've already just made that big speech. It doesn't matter. This is our main menu. I click play. We go here. So the main menu is done. We got the main menu. We know that it's in the build settings and that the main menu index is 3. So when we want to go back to the main menu, we can reference it by 3 or by string, most likely by the index though. So now go to our game manager, and now we're going to start working on our timer. The timer is going to be pretty simple. We're going to have a starting point for time and then count down every second until you get to 0. When you get to 0, you lose. And when you lose, you go back to the main menu and start the whole game over. Nothing frustrating about that. So we're going to set up a few variables here. The first one's going to be a public variable because we're going to be able to modify this in the inspector for each level. It's going to be a public, this will be a float as time, and this is going to be, we're going to have a couple decimal points. So we'll be using a floating number, and then it's going to be called, this will be called start time, and then we'll have a private float, which will be current time. So the start time is the time you get started with, and the current time is the current time would be equal to the start time minus a second each second. That'll make sense here in a second. Second. Now we need a what? Well, I know we're going to be using a custom GUI skin for this one as well. We'll be using the same GUI skin actually. So we'll do a public GUI skin. Now we could be using our like a GUI manager or a interface manager or a menu manager or something like that. But we're doing all this in the game manager just because it's already there and it doesn't make, it makes some sense at least, right? So that'd be fine for us. So we have that, we have the start time, and I think it's all we need for now. That'd be good for now. So to make this work for us, we want to start this in the update. The update happens every single frame. We can't use frame rate for the time though, because frame rate is inconsistent based on the PC and based on the processing that's currently available for the game. So you have to base it on time itself. The way we can do that is I can say current time. Oh, no, what we can do is we can say start time minus equals, right? So we're going to take the start time and subtract a second from it. And the way we can do that is time dot delta time. Delta time is the length of the last frame, and it's going to convert that to us. So we can subtract start time minus delta time, right? So if we were to say start time minus 1 in the update, then every single frame would be losing 1. But this is doing all the work for us and telling us what the length of the last frame was, and then doing all its magic and giving us a single second, right? So start time minus time dot delta time. Now that we have the start time stored there, we can say current time is equal to start time or whatever. But what I think we should do is make this actually a string. And then we can store the start time in a string just like this. So we can say, what was that? Current time is equal to, how do we want to do this? We want to format start time. See, now if we were to do start time as is, we would get like, I don't know, 7 decimal places. So if I was to do start time, or current time is equal to start time. Now start time is an integer and current time is a string. You can't store a string and an integer in a string, just like you can't store any other data type inside of a data type that's not the same type. So we can convert this to a string. We can just do a dot after that, and we'll find toString. Okay, that is a method provided to different objects in C#. So it's pretty great. So start time, it'll convert it to its string version for us that can be read and used in our GUI. And that'll be great. So now we have current time. What we could do just for fun is print the current time and watch that tick down and see if it's working for us. So I'm going to print current time. Now current time is a string, so we can just do it just like that. And internal compiler error. Don't know what I did there to cause that. And in our level 1 here, I'm going to click play, and we should see the time just ticking away. Yeah, it started at 0 though, so that's a bit awkward looking. So if we were to bring this all the way down to the bottom, we can see the time just going away as time would. Starting at 0, it looks a bit weird, but what we could do, and notice that. We don't want that on the screen, right? So we have to format our float, or our string actually, to match what we want it to look like. And the way we can do that is using a method through string. I can go string as in the type and do dot, and we could do format. And notice it wants the string to format, or the string of format, the format in string format, which it'll make sense here in a second. And then we pass it the argument that we want to format to match that format. So the way I do this is I'm going to say format, and then inside of these parentheses here, we're going to pass it a string and then the argument to format for us. So now inside of this string, it's looking for a very particular setup, right? It wants curly braces, and inside of these curly braces, we're going to have a 0 here. And then we're going to say the format is going to be 0.0. We just want a single decimal. If you wanted 3 decimal places, there you go, you do that. But we want a single decimal place. And that'd be what we want right there. And then I can just pass it the start time. The start time. Just like that, it would take that, convert it to that format, store it in that string, and then we'd print that string just like that. Now I click play, and we'll see a single decimal place, and that's exactly what we want. So now we can use that to pass it to a label, and then store that label, or use that label in our scene. So we're going to, just like before, do an on GUI. This is a return type of void. Now in on GUI, we're going to create a GUI. Again, GUI.label. Pass it a rectangle. Now this rectangle, say we wanted to modify this rectangle in the inspector, we can do that. So the position of the thing will be in the inspector. We could do a public rect, right? We could just do rect as the type, and then call it timer rect, just like that. And then pass this value, instead of the new rect here, we'll create a new instance of it through this variable. And then we'll pass the text that will be available here. And the text we want to pass is the current time. Now current time, remember, is a string, because we have a string here, and we're converting the float to a string and passing it to the current time. But now if we were to go to our game here and go to our game manager, over here now we should see a rectangle. Just not, I have an error. I made an error. Timer rect, no error there. Oh, did not close, or did not terminate that line there. And that should go away. And now we have a rectangle, X, a Y, and X, a Y, a width, and a height. And that's exactly what we want. We want to be able to define an offset on the X and a Y, and the width and the height. So the X for this for now is going to be something like 25. And the Y is also going to be about 25. The width of this, it won't really matter that much. It'll be about 200, and the height, let's make a square, 200. Who knows what size it's going to turn out in the end. That's what we're going to start with. So we can actually modify those values in the inspector without having to set them up in the rectangle, or in the declaration, or the instance, I should say, in the class itself, or in the script itself. Lots of ors in that sentence. So now that we have that, and we have the current time, it should just be as much as going here and clicking play, and we should see the current time ticking down from 0. We don't have a start time set. We'll set the start time. This level takes, say, you have a maximum of 15 seconds to get through it. And it starts counting down for 15 seconds, and it will be going down forever, because we don't have a cap set. The way we can check, though, to see what time it actually is set to, is in our update here. I will say if, and I will say current time, or we'll actually do start time, because current time is a string. Start time is the actual integer, or float, actually. If start time is less than or equal to 0, then, I'm not sure what that was, then start time is equal to 0, and print you're out of time. And I've not been zoomed in on the text this whole time. Let me go ahead and do that so you can actually see what I'm doing. So you're out of time. A period, of course. And then whenever we're out of time, whenever start time is less than or equal to 0, which means we've went through the full time that was allotted to this level. When it hits 0, make sure it's always at 0. Make sure it doesn't go below 0, because it would go into negatives, and that would just look odd to the player. So make sure you set it to 0, and it can never go below 0. And then print, you're out of time. Now I'm going to go back to Unity here, and I'm going to click play. And we're going to wait for this to go down for 15 seconds. That was a stupid decision. Let's put this on 5. And I'll click play. And I go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and hit 0. It'll stay on 0 and print, you're out of time. And that's great because we can use that when you run out of time. And just for now, it's going to be pretty abrupt and ugly. But we can just load a different level, application.load level. And we'll do the load level of our main menu, which is integer or index of 3. Remember from our build settings, that's where the index is coming from. So now when I run out of time, this should take me back to the main menu. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and main menu. You lose. Notice the integer is still there because that game manager persists through all games, but we can just kill that off whenever that happens. But for now, that's fine. So we have load level 3, and then that's going to work for us. So now we want to do, let's do a custom style for this one as well. So on our own GUI, I'm going to say GUI.skin is equal to skin. Skin does not have anything applied to it yet. So we'll go here, go to skin, make sure we grab the skin we created before in our materials, grab GUI, drag it over there. And now that's that. Now I click on this. I want to set up a custom style for this timer because we can't use label for that and use it for this and this and this because we have to have different styles for each different label. Say our logo is a label or our game of the name is a label. Game of the name? Really? The name of the game is a label. And then our timer is a label. Well, those are two different styles and they share the same style. So we can't do that. So we have to create what's called a custom style. And there's an array here that we can assign as many as we want to the length of that. But we're going to work with one for now. I'm going to call this label timer. And the normal text, now this is the same as before, but the normal text is going to be a white for now. Maybe we'll lower the opacity a bit, lower the alpha on that to about right there. And then come down here to the font size. I want to change this to something pretty large, like a 55. And don't want to need to change any of these settings really. Upper left is what we want. Need to set a font to it though. Our font's going to be the default Arial that is provided for us. And then that should be good. So now though, we have to make sure that the label that we're wanting to use that is actually using that. Because with this label is going to be using the default label style, which is not what we want. We can pass it a label style or a custom style for it to use. And then we'll say skin, which is the name of our GUI skin, dot get style, I believe it is. Yeah, get style. And then we'll pass it the string name of the style that we just created that is available inside of this skin right here. And that style was called timer. So now, unless I mess something up, if I was to go back in here and click play, our timer should be big, and that's what it is. It's pretty large now. Notice it also sticks to the upper left. I died. Let's change that. Go to game manager here and change this to something like 50 so we get more time to talk. Notice when I move the windows over here, it resizes the game, but the GUI element is actually stuck at 10 and 10, which is what we want it to do. Maybe in the future we'll get into a bit more advanced GUI stuff where stuff shrinks and resizes itself based on the resolution. And that's pretty fun stuff, but it's definitely not for this little series. So that's how we get that. Now, whenever we hit 0, we're checking for that, and then we're not really dying, but we are restarting the whole level. What if when we hit 0, we just restarted the level we're on? Nah, for now I like where we're at. So with this, there's no way for score to be calculated the way we have it set up. because when you die, you're done with the game, right? And in the future, maybe we'll have, like when you die, you'll see your scoreboard pop up and tell you how you did. Maybe compare it to your high score in the back end and see if you're better than your high score. And if you are, say you beat your high score. You got this far in this amount of time and collected this many coins, and good job. Here's 14 stars for no reason. And that could be good, right? That could make it more of a game. And each time you complete a level, we'll have a little menu maybe that pops up and says, hey, this is your score for this level. This was your score in this level last time. Look, you did worse, so you suck. Something like that. Something that would be cool like that to do. But for now, what we have is finished. We have a very, very beautiful main menu. And then we have an interesting timer. So when the time gets to 0, we die. One thing we could do, let me show you something real quick before we go, is I want to change, say when you get down to, I don't know, 5 seconds remaining, we can change the timer color to like a red, like, oh, hurry up, you're almost out of time, hurry. So we could do a check, we could say if, then we could say time, what was it called? What was that variable called? Start time. Say if start time is less than 5. Then we can come through this and say skin dot get style. Now it might be best to store this style itself inside of a variable instead of accessing it every time. It's every single redraw that is below that. You're accessing it going through the skin to the get style method, getting the style that way. Probably best to store this inside of a variable. But for now, this will work for us. So I can say GUI style, then pass it the string name again, so that'll be timer. And then do a dot here, and then go through the normal setting and to the text color. And we could change the text color to a color. But one cool way we could do this is if I was to set up a variable for color, and I can show you another cool thing about the Unity inspector. So I'll say public color. Color is a type here, so it can be color, and then say warning color timer. And then I can pass this value to equal the color and do that. And then we'll set up a default color as well. So if I copy that, come down here and do that and say default color timer. So we're going to check to see if it's not. So else default color timer. So we'll pass this here, do that. Control X that, paste it there. And there we have that. So now we're saying if the start time is less than 5 seconds remaining, change the color to whatever color we set here. Else, it's going to be the default color. So if we were to go into Unity now, see what areas we have, there are none. We have a warning color timer and a default color timer. And then you see this really cool color picker. Click that, and we get to select all these colors. And it will store the values for us, instead of us having to go through and store the RGB color values or hex color values or anything like that. It will store the values for us based on what we pick in this selector. So the warning color timer, we could be something like a red, and the default color timer could be a white. So it's going to be white normally, but whenever it gets down to 5 seconds, it'll be red. Now notice the alpha is all the way down. We want to turn this up to something like that. And then this will be something like that. Just a little bit, not even close, but whatever, it'll work. Now click play now. Now we should see, I ain't waiting that long. Put this on 10 seconds to do this level. Click play. It's white until it gets down to 5, and it should turn itself to red. Now it turns red. It's pretty simple. Looks kind of silly, but it gets to the point that we lose and we go home. And that's all we're going to do in this video. I hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned something. We went over quite a bit of stuff. We talked about some GUI stuff. We talked about a simple timer system. And I hope that is going to be useful to you in your adventures into game development. I know a lot of games have timers, and you obviously want to have some kind of GUI system. So we're working on a very basic GUI implementation in our game, working with the out-of-the-box Unity Unity stuff, right? And that's what we need to do. Focus on the Unity stuff and not the plugin stuff, because we're working in the Unity environment where you may not always have that plugin stuff. But I'm going to cut this video here, and next time we will be doing, maybe we'll add in the coins throughout the level that you have to get to, and then get to the end, and then use those coins and the time to do some kind of scoring based off of that. So we have the time element in there now, and we know how much time, we can figure out how much time you have when the level is completed. And when that happens, then we can make up some kind of weird multiplier to do something with the amount of coins we have, and it'll be pretty great. So that'll be fun next time. But for now, I'm going to call this quits. I'll talk to you guys next time. Thank you for watching. My name is Austin, and I'll see you next time.